Quote, "Some betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people you sat next to at dinner, smiling, pretending they had no fire in their eyes." I remember the first time I met him. He stood next to my sister, holding her hand, smiling in that polite, distant way men often do when they're trying to be respectful. I didn't think much of it. He was just her fiancé, someone I'd learned to be friendly with, nothing more. That was all he was supposed to be. Back then, I was still unsure of who I was. I had just moved back home after a failed relationship, and everything around me felt like recovery. My parents were kind but worried, and my sister, as always, was radiant, glowing with the kind of happiness that made people look twice. And there he was, the man she was about to marry, quiet, composed, with those eyes that seemed to always be watching something just behind you. I didn't notice him at first. Not like that. To me, he was family now. Someone I'd call by name across the dinner table, someone I'd see at birthdays and holidays. He wasn't mine to think about. But something shifted. It started with the way he spoke to me. Not inappropriately, never. Just attentive. When I talked, he listened. Fully. Like every word mattered. And after months of feeling invisible, that kind of attention felt dangerous. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. But then came the little things, the way he remembered my favorite songs, the way he once called to check on me after a bad day, the way his smile lingered a second too long when we locked eyes. I brushed it off. I had to. For my sister. For the family. For the simple fact that this wasn't supposed to be a story. I tried to stay away. I made excuses. Left early. Avoided eye contact. But distance didn't help. If anything, it made everything sharper. More present. I would think about the way he looked at her, then the way he looked at me. I would remember conversations, then question if I was reading too much into them. I was caught in a quiet war with myself. I still remember the night it became undeniable. It was my sister's birthday. She had gone to bed early with a headache, and the rest of the family had slowly retired to their rooms. I stayed behind, finishing a glass of wine in the quiet. And he stayed too. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, talking softly about everything and nothing. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be okay?" It was such a simple sentence, but something broke open inside me. "Yes," I whispered. And then the silence filled the space between us, thick and electric. He didn't move closer. I didn't lean in. But somehow, the air between us changed. I felt it. He did too. When I stood to leave, he caught my wrist. Not hard. Just enough to make me stop. "I think about you," he said. More than I should. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just walked away. But I didn't sleep that night. And I never saw him the same way again. From then on, we danced around it. Around this thing that had no name. A look too long. A smile too private. A silence that said too much. And still, nothing had happened. Not really. Not in the way people would define it. But it lived in me. In every breath I took near him. In every moment we shared in crowded rooms where no one else knew. It was a secret I carried like a second skin. And I hated it. I hated how much I wanted to see him, even when I knew I shouldn't. I hated how I started dressing differently for family dinners. I hated how I'd find myself glancing at him just to see if he was looking back. I hated how my heart sped up when our hands brushed accidentally. I hated how I remembered the smallest things he said to me. But most of all, I hated that I didn't tell him to stop. There was a part of me that waited. For him to confess. For him to step over the line first. As if that would make it less my fault. Then came the night everything changed. I had just gotten home from work. It was. We didn't speak for a while after that night. Not because we were avoiding each other, but because we didn't know how to go back to pretending. Every glance now meant something. Every interaction carried weight. We had done something we couldn't undo, and yet no one else knew. My sister smiled like always. She hugged me tightly, joked with him, shared stories. And the guilt of it all began to rot something inside me. I tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was a moment of weakness. A mistake. A slip. But it wasn't. It was a choice. One that kept repeating, silently, invisibly, over the following weeks. There were no more late-night visits, but there were stolen moments. In the kitchen when everyone else was outside. In the car when he offered to drop me home. In the hallway when our arms brushed and neither of us moved away. The worst part was how good it felt. How safe. Like I was finally being seen. Finally being understood. Not as someone's sister. Not as someone recovering. But as me. Entirely. It was that feeling that made it dangerous. Not lust. Not recklessness. But the illusion of love. I journaled obsessively during that time. Wrote down every moment. Every look. Every word. I had no one to talk to, and the pages became my only witness. I would write at night until my hand ached, hoping the ink could carry some of the weight I was burying. One evening, I found a note tucked inside my mailbox. No name. Just a few words, "We can't keep doing this." I knew it was from him. I knew it the way you know your own breath. I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Because I agreed. And because I didn't want it to end. The next few weeks were quiet. We saw each other, of course, family events, Sunday lunches, birthdays. But something had shifted. We were colder. He avoided me more. I tried to match his distance. It was like we were trying to erase something we had carved into ourselves. Then one day, my sister announced she was pregnant. Everything in me froze. She was glowing. Laughing. So happy she cried. And there he was, beside her, holding her hand like he was the luckiest man in the world. I excused myself. Locked the bathroom door. Sat on the cold tiles and stared at the floor. This was real now. This was a family. And I was the fracture no one saw coming. I didn't sleep that night. I walked. 4 hours. Through streets I didn't know. Trying to feel something different. Trying to escape the version of me I had become. The next morning, I made a decision. I packed a small bag and left a note on the table. Just a few words, "I need time away. Please don't worry." I went to the coast. Rented a small cabin. Turned off my phone. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just disappeared for a while. In that silence, something inside me cracked open. I cried every night. I cooked simple meals. I walked barefoot on the sand. I wrote letters I never sent. I told the sea everything. And slowly, I started to forgive myself. Not because what I did was right, but because I couldn't live in punishment forever. A month later, I came back. Nothing had changed. And everything had. My sister ran into my arms. She was already showing. Her belly small and round. He stood at the edge of the room, silent, unreadable. We barely spoke. Just polite nods. Careful words. That night, I saw him outside. Smoking. Alone. I stood beside him. Said nothing for a while. Then I whispered, "It's over." He nodded. I know. Neither of us cried. We didn't hug. We didn't say sorry. There was nothing left to say. It ended without drama. Without fire. Just a quiet acceptance of the ruin we almost became. Time has passed since then. Years, actually. Seasons have come and gone. My sister now has 2 children. I am their favorite aunt. The youngest has his father's eyes, and sometimes, when he looks at me, I wonder if he sees something I once tried to bury. We never spoke of it again. He never called. I never reached out. We built our lives back on silence, as if that could erase what happened. But it never really left. It just sank into the walls of every room we entered together. Sometimes I catch him watching me during family gatherings. Just a second too long. Just a glance too weighted. And sometimes I look back, not out of longing, but out of memory. We are ghosts to each other now. We haunt each other in quiet ways. I often wonder who I became because of that chapter. I don't think I'm proud of her. But I don't hate her either. She was lost. She was human. She was aching for something soft in a world that had been too hard. I've dated since then. Carefully. Slowly. But I never let anyone too close. Not because of what happened, but because of what I learned. How easy it is to fall, how quietly the wrong thing can feel like the right one, and how love, real love, never starts with someone else's name still on your lips. One day, while helping my sister clean the attic, I found an old photo. It was the 3 of us. She was in the middle, her arms around both of us. We were all smiling. The kind of smile you wear when you think life is simple. I stared at it for a long time. My sister came up behind me. "That was a good day," she said, not noticing my stillness. I nodded. "Yeah, it was." That night, I burned the photo. Not out of hatred. Not out of shame. But because some memories need to be turned to ash before they can stop hurting. I still carry the weight of it. But it's lighter now. Softer. Like a scar that doesn't sting when you press it, but still reminds you where you've been. Sometimes, when I walk alone, I think about the version of me that almost ruined everything. I don't run from her anymore. I walk beside her. Because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning how to live with the truth and still choosing to grow. And I am growing. Even with the secret. Even with the silence. Even with the memory of the man who was never mine. He was my sister's husband, but he fell in love with me English story for beginners.